kind of like what we were talking about last night about unconditional love and communal, how to be a community, how to, what it is to be a community, and how we can go from this to something better, you know?
Sure. Okay. Well,
So what do you think?
That's quite a springboard. But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, what, maybe we start with our own experiences, from when you first realize you're conscious to when you realize, hey, I'm not really all of this. What's going on around me? And
Wow.
when did you first get that idea? Like,
That's. I wouldn't even. Wow. No. First off, nobody's ever asked me that before, so that's pretty well right there.
right?
I would say probably throughout my life I had those experiences, but I didn't necessarily have the awareness to really understand what was happening. I would say I had been longing for connection and an understanding of unity with the universe, God. Whatever term floats your boat, for me is God. But I didn't exactly know that that's what I was doing until probably the first time I got into 12-step recovery when I was 28 years old, and I had been, getting into a lot of illicit substances towards the end of that period from the age of 18 till 28.
Now, taking those substances, getting into it, was it more peer pressure, or did you?
No, it was more a feeling of loneliness, separateness, and just the need to just feel outside of those feelings of dread and discontent.
Did you ever have the experience, like, so, when I grew up, I was very lucky that it's that lucky period, in the early 50s and 60s before the hip scene. And I grew up in New York, and I had a number of mentors, elders, who just kind of said, hey, what do you think of this kid? And they would get me to think, right? And never tell me an answer, just what do you think of this? So did you ever have a teacher or a priest or anybody
It's
like
funny because I had high school, my junior year of high school, where a lot of shit was just going wrong with my family. I started to I knew at a very young age that I needed to get the hell away from my family because they were going to destroy me on some kind of spiritual level. Although I couldn't articulate it, I was like, I know I have to get out because I'm going to get smothered to death under some kind of insanity. But I had some bright spots because it's easy to get into the, oh, woe is me, and forget that there were bright spots. There was quite a lot. Probably the accumulation of those bright spots brought me to the point where I could be on a phone call with someone like yourself. I had, to answer your question, I had a teacher, his name was Mr. Edward Fates. Still remember him to this very day. He was my English teacher in my junior year of high school. And he was really, he was that guy. He taught all the classic literature, Charles Dickens,
right?
Stuff like that. But he had such a passion for it. And, he knew the shitty little town that we were in and the myopic thinking that was going on. And he saw that I wanted to break out of that. So he was very encouraging. But I really enjoyed a class he did when I was a senior in high school. It was I don't remember the name of the course. It was an AP course you could have college credit for. But I just went because I liked it so much. The main basic text of that book was called Language and Thought in Action by S.I. Hayakawa.
Right, yeah.
The concepts of semantics, very rudimentary as it was presented because it's a high school level. but the map is not the territory. The word is not the thing. Just those kind of things. And
Right.
the descriptions of Swift's Gulliver's Travels and how, you know, the literal communication. I forgot there's a section in that book where there's two. I forgot what the creatures are called, and they don't use language. They just would carry, like, if they wanted to communicate teacup, he'd have a giant sack and pull out teacup and show it to the other. They couldn't speak them. They had to carry the symbols with them.
Right.
Now, that was somehow seeping into my brain, was this whole idea of symbol manipulation. And that's, you know, that man's inherent gift that God has given us in the universe is the ability to create meaning. And that was kind of tucked away for many years. I couldn't articulate what I just said. It was in there. From that moment, I started reading that book, and I met that man. I got kind of diverted with, you know, sex, drugs, and rock and roll. I was doing music videos for friends' bands and stuff. So there was always a creative element going on. It really lacked a lot of direction.
Do you
And
think
as I said,
getting into
what's that?
drugs was the thing that distracted you from
I
a
don't
higher?
think it's necessarily the drugs themselves that kind of caused the disruption. I think it was just a symptom of what was going on inside of me and how confused I was and wanting to get out of those feelings of confusion. And I did get a lot of rest, and it certainly helped the anxiety.
Right.
You know, hard drugs will do that.
Right.
But then it kind of turned on me.
When you say hard drugs,
Well, we're talking like, well, later on in my life, it was
Right.
heroin,
right.
cocaine, mostly heroin. You know,
So
mostly
the first time you took
sex.
heroin, I had an experience. I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which is a real heroin town, and I got this job. You know, I had all these really crappy jobs, and then I got a job that took advantage of my skill set, and it was like a mobster kind of thing. This guy had all the really good jobs, and you had to owe it to him. He took a chunk of your paycheck, but after 2 years of being his slave, you would have a really good job, and I would have a master's license and a this and a that, and I was getting paid so much that what he took out didn't matter, because I had these other crappy jobs that I actually got like paid 35 cents an hour. Anyway, I'm waiting in this waiting room, and everyone was either happy, they were holding this like little kind of foldery thing that showed that you had a job, meaning all the paperwork was in there. And then we went into a room and had a debauched party, right? And this girl, very attractive girl, was wearing a nurse's uniform, and she was going to have a job, right? So anyway, we had the party, we hit it off. I had a place. She came back. We had a great old time. And then I had to go to work, and I'd work all week out of town, and then come back Friday, and she would be at my place, and all we'd do is screw. And she had the best pot, and so we'd screw pot. I'm a good cook. I'd make dinner. We never went anywhere. Never did anything, right? And I'm 22.
I had the same experience.
Right. And so 22, it's okay.
Absolutely.
But I said, honey, there's a lot of music in this town, and there's a lot of entertainment. I really haven't ever had the money to go investigate. Why don't we just go out sometime? I mean, not to say that I don't like smoking pot with you and having sex all the time. That's okay. But, let's try. Let's change it up. She goes, okay, next week I'm going to have I just have an apartment, and I'm going to have a party in my new apartment. And I drove her home that Sunday. She showed me where the apartment was. Anyway, next week I show up for the party, and they're all these kind of musician types, right? And they're all tweaking. They're all like nervous. They're all like, and I've seen that before. They're all junkies, And she comes in with a doctor's bag, goes in, and she's wearing her nurse's uniform. And she comes in, and one by one, these guys go in. They come out really, really relaxed.
Oh,
right?
She was what they used to call the head nurse.
Right, the head nurse. Right.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
And so anyway,
the thing.
when that shit's going on, this guy comes over to me who I have no idea who he is, and he goes, "You're Al, aren't you?" I said, "Yep." He goes, "I really, really want," and he's tweaking. "I really, really want to thank you." I said, "For what, man?" He goes, "For saving my marriage." And I'm going, what? And then she kind of pops her head out and goes, "Honey, come over here." And he bounces in there and he shoots her up. And then I'm the last guy, but I'm not tweaking. All these guys are now kind of, nodding, right? So they basically, she says, "Hey, Al, come in here." So I come in there and she goes, "So I want to show you something." And she opens up a bag and she has hospital morphine, right?
Yeah.
And she has a syringe that is, no one's used, right? It's in a little plastic, thing, ready. And she goes, and I just shot everyone up with morphine, and that's why they are. And we like heroin and morphine. And since I got the job in the hospital, and there were no computers, she goes, "I can just lift as much as I want. It's no big deal." And she goes, "I want you to try it." And I said, "But who's that guy?" And she goes, "No, no, no." And so I go to myself, being the Aquarian that I am, I said, "If I'm ever going to try heroin," I never did any hard drugs. I hated cocaine. I never did any of that kind of stuff. When I was working, building these clubs, maybe I'd smoke a little pot, but even that was very, very, very little. And I didn't ever smoke it alone. I like to share it with other people. Anyway, here's all these people. We're going to have a party. And she's a nurse, and it's hospital grade. And this is way before AIDS or hepatitis or anything. I go, well, if I'm ever going to try it, this is the time. So she puts the hose around my arm. She, takes the stuff in.
Alcohol prep.
Right, the whole thing, the nurse thing, right? And fills a syringe. And then she kind of puts the needle in and sucks my blood into the syringe. I see it swirling around, and I say, this must be what they call chasing the dragon, because it kind of looked like a dragon in there. And then she shot the whole thing in my arm, and boy, main mining, it was like I exploded.
I wasn't an IV guy, but yeah, it was.
Right.
Which I'm kind of glad, because I think it would have gotten me a little harder to get off of had I got.
Well, so the first, so I am toast. I kind of make it out there.
Did you get all sick?
No. I was just drooling, Anyway, the party goes on for some time, and I'm just over in the corner drooling. And then they all decide to go to this music, because all these guys are musicians. They got a gig to play. So it's about 9:00. We get in this big Plymouth, and I'm sitting at the back and by the window, and it's raining, and the rain's hitting the glass and the lights of the oncoming thing, and it's exploding in my head. And it's really just, I have no idea where I am, but all these, fireworks are going up in my head. And then we pull into this place, and everyone gets out, and someone opens the door, and I fall out of the car onto the parking lot, which is just a dirty thing with potholes, and my head goes into the puddle, and one nostril and one eyeball are in the puddle.
Nice.
And the other nostril is not, and I can see, but I can't move, and no one picks me up.
Yeah,
they just leave me in the puddle.
Yeah.
Luckily, a rock went up my nostril, and so no water got into my lungs. And I don't even know I'm in the puddle, and it's raining on me. And I'm just looking at the lights, and this car comes and he nearly runs over my head. He stops, like the wheel is like a foot from my head. He gets out. He comes out of the car. He stumbles on me. And he goes, "What are you doing down there?" And he grabs me, drags me into the club, and drags me over to this table and throws me down. He goes, "Whose guy is this?" And the nursey guy had two of those guys grab me and bring over to their table. And they play music, and the rest of everything's a blur. And 2 days later, I end up in my house, and I get up to go take a shower, and there's a black line on my face, right,
Jeez.
straight down where my head had been in the puddle. And I, take the shower, and it doesn't really come off. And I say to myself, okay, that's it. This girl is off the list, And so I
Yeah.
never went back to
Well,
her.
it sounds to me when you were describing it. I mean, I kind of knew it wasn't gonna necessarily have a happy ending,
Right.
but
Well, the happy ending was I didn't go back and get to become a
that's
junkie.
exactly that's good.
Right.
Because it sounds to me almost that she had
Used
she
me
had
up.
an assortment of a junkie harem, and she would just keep these guys strung out,
Right.
and kind of under her power.
Yes.
That's the vibe I got.
Yep.
And
Oh,
then,
yes.
people do shit like that. I fortunately I never fell into that. It was more just my own self-destructive nature.
Right.
But I took, you surround yourself with
But
a
that,
lifestyle
I mean,
with a lot of shitty people
right. I saw that as a good thing
who
because,
abandoned themselves
right.
to the point of personal dereliction.
Right. And that's what it was. It kept me away from that. That one, like, whoa,
Well,
okay.
and that tells me right off the bat, right?
Right.
In two areas, it tells me one thing about personality. One, from my own personal recovery experience, and two, also being a clinician.
Right.
You don't have addictive tendencies.
Right.
Because a real dopey would be like, well, that wasn't so bad. I'll go back for some more.
Right.
So,
well, the black line on my face.
originally, I was the latter part.
Right. The black line on my face, because I then had to go to work, and everyone said, "What happened to you? I mean, what's that black line? Why do you look like a Negro on one side of your face?" And, so
Like that Star Trek episode.
yes, exactly. That's what that was me. And the other thing was, everyone was so junked out, so self-medicated, because they were so miserable in Albuquerque. I mean, everybody. It didn't matter. I mean, it was really the rich and everybody else. So you could understand why everybody else was miserable. And but even the rich were self-medicating. It was like, and that's
Well,
what,
it goes back to a loss of meaning. And, human beings will find whatever it is they're going to find to make meaning, whether it's destructive or productive. At least it's a meaning. It's a story.
Right.
It's a context.
right.
Might not be something you would want to participate in. But that's it. And so bringing us back to the question you first started this conversation off. If you're going to ask me, well, what was your first time? Whatever. Like I said, since something so that kind of a journey doesn't, at least in my mind, where I'm at right now in my life,
Mm-hmm.
it's so cyclical that I couldn't even say, well, it started here. It's just not, because once you kind of cross over into breaking past the dualistic thinking, then you already realize it's a cyclical thing. It's been happening all along. I mean, what am I going to tell you, from my birth? Probably. But as far as actively maybe being more awake, that early signs of that was when I was 28, when I first got sober. I was first introduced to 12-step recovery. However, I didn't want to take on that full journey.
Right.
I was benefiting with certain things. I went back into prayer. I even started embracing my religion I was raised in as a Christian. And I felt something there. But I still had my foot in the other world.
Was what flavor Christianity? Were you Catholic? Or?
I was raised as a Catholic, but I don't necessarily identify as a Catholic. I just kind of, the thing about recovery that's so awesome, or at least in the 12-step world, that they encourage, you take what you need, leave the rest. That's the first. And I had an inkling of having an eclectic approach before that. I was, kind of had my toe in, some occult stuff.
Right.
And, I was searching. I had always been searching, but when it became more apparent, that direction was a little, the glimmer of that I had when I had 1 year of abstinence from all mind-altering substances from 1997 and 98. And then when I relapsed and then I got clean again in 2007, I think that seed had been planted, even though I was living out a very insane life of active addiction. But it was like the sand in the oyster. It was
the grist in the mill.
In the mill, the coal that became a diamond.
Right.
So then when I got clean again, I had a lot of time to think about this stuff. And then when I did, that window of opportunity, which can only in my world be described as a miracle, where I had enough sense to say, okay, this is the last detox. This is the last rehab. I'm going to do what was suggested in this 12-step program. And then one of the things that I think is so important, I like to share with other folks, is that one of the things that I think this is a common thing that keeps people trapped in doing something like that. Because you think, okay, if it's any kind of a system or process, you're going to lose your individuality. That's not true.
Right.
That's not what I found.
Right.
I found you become more of yourself.
Right. You become
become
clear.
Right.
You become
like,
clear.
Oh, there's some more cool stuff
Right.
within my consciousness. And I want to find, it's kind of like autopilot takes over and your brain and your spirit are taking you, moving you, animating you.
Right.
To find things to help you heal. Whether it's, for me, it was movies, books, television. These are, I would gravitate to certain things. Yourself, finding you on the internet,
Right.
Stuff like that. It was just like, oh. And it's just I have a quote on my art page. Basically, my mission is that I am collecting the pieces of my consciousness from the landscape of the world. That's my mission.
Yes.
That's what's going on with me.
And that's a good description of what we're doing here, because we are not our bodies. We're not even our souls. We are spirit, because our spirit is that connectivity, that co-creation of love. And God is love. I mean, the word God, I'm an etymologist, so I'm real picky about words. And, God goes all the way back to the Sumerians. And you're basically talking about this guy who's all about gold, So that's why you go into churches, they're all covered in gold. And no, it's love that's the great maker of everything, right? And we're all connected to everything, And when you were talking about consciousness, it's really interesting. I've been studying that for a long time on a scientific level, and I would go get involved in university studies. And anyway, I was involved in one the Navy was looking at dolphins using because they have really amazing echolocation and a whole bunch of things. And they could tell that a dolphin could, and dolphins are like a CAT scan machine. They can see inside of animals. So they can see their prey from far away before their eyes can by echolocating and seeing what organs are in there. And then you go, oh, I know it's that kind of fish I want to eat. So they'll go over and get it before they can even see it. And they can also identify images of things, right? And then be shown on a video screen and pick out the image. The thing they echolocated, they can pick it out on the video screen. And so there is a unbelievably sophisticated consciousness there that because it's a fish, we can't, put together that, hey, this thing is smarter than I am, right? And that's why humans are having a hard time, because we have this exceptionalism, and we can't, we're wiping out species without realizing who and what they are, and that they connect to us. And I think that's one of the biggest problems we're having, and why we have wars and all of this, because instead of seeing the singularity and the connectivity between everybody.
Well, that's sort of like the universal good versus evil, light versus dark. You
Right.
know, and then this the whole idea is like, no, it's none of that.
It's none of that.
It's really, if anything, it's self versus self.
Right.
It's
It's the ego.
you know,
Right.
and it's a really great lecture. This fellow by the name of Grant Morrison, who's a comic book writer.
Right.
I think I may have mentioned to it the last time we spoke.
Right.
And the lecture that he gave on magic that I found, it's still there.
Right.
And he really gets into that. He talks about that there's an actual term for viewing everything on the earth as one organism, and it's called the biota. Everything's the biota. It's the one. It's like the scientific term for all life.
Yes.
It's connected. You know. And yeah, it's true. It's separation is a lie.
It's a vehicle that enables the pyramid scam to work.
Oh, absolutely. Sure.
Right. So,
Well, then again, you know, these folks that think they run stuff, or I don't know, whatever term you want. The empire, the Illuminati, the man. When you realize that, at least this is how I take it. I can be just as much as the man, the Illuminati, or those who think they control,
right.
as they are, because how could I have to ask myself as an individual, how complicit am I in that fracturing, in that separation? You know, and if you wanted to, like at the beginning of the conversation, like how can we change things, or what you had mentioned, I would say, well, me, I just have to start with looking at myself. How much am I contributing to that separation?
Right.
And what can I do within my behavior to be more balanced and have oneness? And also recognizing the imperfection of being a human being. And that's part of it's kind of like you separate and you dissolve back into the one again.
Right. Michael Jackson's song "Man in the Mirror" is a great definition.
It's a great example. It gives you instructions right there.
Yep. So, and people like Michael Jackson, a great example. I mean, he's a great artist, great spiritual entity, and yet he's surrounded by this corrupt kind of environment, and he was susceptible to it. He couldn't fight it. I mean, he could pop out some amazing songs, and his sister.
Well, you kind of see like how okay, he comes from horrific childhood.
Yep.
Yet from that pressure, Diamond.
And all those
and I'm
kids.
not excusing his other behavior of inappropriateness with children at all.
Right.
It's for whoever's listening to make that very clear. I'm not excusing that. But this is also part of the dualistic nature
of the body, of the illusion of the material world. And that's really, that is the problem, is that the material world is an illusion, right? It doesn't exist. Only love exists. And so when you are totally surrounded by the material world, and you can't, that's why prayer is so important. And, when I tell people I pray 50 times a day, it's not like I'm I lived in Islamic culture, and I went to, call up prayer and put down the rug and do it, because it was a great exercise, and it was I love doing things in community. And that community were really appreciative, and because they go, well, Al is definitely, he wasn't brought up a Muslim. He's not even a Muslim, but he has got great respect for what we do, to the point where he does it, right? And gets his own thing out of it. Mullah once said that to me. He says, you're not a Muslim, but you are expressing that kind of humility that Islam tries to strive for. And,
well, it's a submission.
Right.
It goes beyond that. Right. I always love that expression in the Quran. It says, God is as close to you as your jugular vein.
Right.
Because it's in you. It's you.
Right. It's you.
It's you.
Yep.
And that's, again, for those who are listening, I'm not advocating that I am a deity that creates universes or anything like that. However, what I am trying to express is that we're all the universe expressing itself.
Right.
We are its own creation in and of itself.
We're all one love. We're all
One love,
yeah.
baby. That's it.
Yeah.
You know,
all
And
our
it's-
relations. I mean, and not
you
just
know, there are
humans.
different ways to access those insights.
Yeah.
Prayer being one, meditation,
Yep.
making art,
Right.
good conversation.
Yep.
Damn, baking bread, maybe.
Yep.
You know, whatever. There's an essence within us, and it's funny that I even feel awkward saying within, because that even gives it more of a dualist, like, oh well, if there's an inside and out, so
Right.
there is an inside and out. It's just, these are just symbolic terms
Right.
we use, which is okay because that's where magic comes from.
Right.
You know, magic is the manipulation of symbols.
Right.
You know? And that's, again, like lately, all this stuff has kind of been coming together for me. Like all the books, all the people who showed up in my life, you know, I kind of like have been putting a thread together through all of it leading up to this phone call. And, you know, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. I was pointed to where I'm supposed to be.
Yep. And as long
Even the bad stuff that happened in life,
Right.
it's all part of the journey.
yes, and that's how I look at everything in my life is an opportunity to do my best. And that's really the only thing. Me as this meat puppet here, my job is to do my best. Period.
It
Whatever
really is.
whatever I'm doing my best. That's kind of how it.
And it's just been so, you know, human beings have been learning to share this information, which you and I have been kind of
Playing with.
been playing with, or the transmission that we received, and
Right.
we're just the channel bringing that forward.
Yeah.
As is everyone else.
Yeah.
Whether they choose to block that or let it pass through, it's up to them. You're either going to pass through easily or pass through like a kidney stone.
Right. And
It's too
if,
much- I don't want that kind of pain.
but and even if you do that, if you can, it's how I roll. Whatever I go through, if I can, I have 3 rules. You know, doctor, do no harm. Don't get involved unless you have a workable exit strategy and you're going in to get the innocent folk out of harm's way. And don't get involved unless you can learn something. Those are my 3 rules. That's how I roll. Those 3 things.
Good.
And everything else is irrelevant within the construct of how I roll.
No, I'm glad we both coined the term the Forrest Gump principle.
Yes, that's
I'm sharing that with my wife. She gotta get that.
yeah. And I'm once I saw that movie, I mean, I said, my God, that's me, you know. But I'm not, you know, I'm that, but different.
Well, this is the, you know, like, I mean, God, I was always, as a young person, I was attracted to, and like, that teacher I had. You know, we were reading Ulysses.
Right.
Reading the great books, you know? And it's so important. I'm so glad I had that because I identify the universal journey
Yeah.
of a man or a woman or whatever is seeking an adventure. You know, it's the mono myth
Right.
or the hero's journey, as
Right.
Campbell talks about.
Did you read that?
I watched that whole Bill Moyers thing. I never read the book.
Yeah, that was
That
good.
was my introduction to. I think a lot of guys in my generation, that was our introduction to Joseph Campbell, was that Bill Moyers special.
Right.
And you know, it was also kind of attracted a lot of folks because of his relationship to George Lucas, the influence on Star Wars.
Oh man, I mean, and George Lucas didn't even tip a hat. I mean, he sat at the foot.
Very, very little. Very little.
He didn't say, "Hey, thanks, Joseph," because basically, that whole movie was Joseph Campbell. I mean, everything about it.
Right. I mean, you know, it's funny. I guess I'm going to just keep answering your question.
Yeah.
But I went to art school. I went to School of Visual Arts, and I had one teacher there. I didn't stay long. My first year.
Right.
But I still remember his name too, Scott Buchatman. He's not I think he was only like a temp at the time, or he wasn't a full-time staff
Right.
teacher, but he taught film theory and criticism. And he was another one about how things are structured. He brought a lot of that into, how to analyze films. And, that was a game changer. That stuck even to this very day. And now, not just with film, but you apply that to all the arts and life itself. Themes and how things are structured. And, life's a movie.
Right, life's a movie. I mean, I relate to movies within political and historical structures, like who's the guy who did Full Metal Jacket?
Stanley Kubrick.
All of Stanley Kubrick's movies are like mind-boggling, right? And the movie Gangs of New York, I think if you want to know what America is, that one movie describes it to a T.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely agree. Well, and I think too, with any of the arts, film in particular for me, is really that you are watching the collective unconscious brought to life in film.
Who's the guy who did had Dennis Hopper in it, who was always huffing
well, he was in Apocalypse Now.
no, but he would I'm talking about something purple or purple
Blue Velvet?
Yeah, Blue Velvet, right.
David Lynch.
Right, David Lynch. And he did another movie that was about LA, like Mulholland Drive or something.
Mulholland Drive.
Right, where this young peaches and cream girl comes to the big city, stays with her aunt to be a movie star, and she gets in it. And all this stuff happens, and at the beginning it's like you can follow it, and then it starts falling apart. And then you realize it's the last moments of this girl, and she's on drugs, masturbating, and then blows her brains out. That's the end of the movie, right?
I never saw that. I've watched Lost Highway.
Right. So all his movies are like
Well,
that.
they're dreams.
Yeah, they're dreams, right? I mean, that movie was like the most amazing. If you want to know what stream of consciousness is, watch it, Dennis. One of his movies. I mean,
That's really good, and I think my favorite. And another thing that was a big influence on me was what is it called? It's a Wim Wenders movie, Wings of Desire.
yes.
And that is a stream of consciousness movie too.
Yes.
And that's a movie that I'm glad I watched it when I was young, because I didn't know what I was looking at. I didn't have the facility, other than it was like, wow, this is really cool. It's drawing me into something. And it took me 50 years after that to really understand what I was looking at.
Did you ever see?
I love movies like that. You have to revisit them. You
Right.
have to look at them
Over and over. Did you ever see Zardos? That's one of my.
Zardos, absolutely.
Right.
Yeah, I was goofing around on Facebook. I for some reason I woke up one morning and I was like, Zardos, that flying head.
Right.
It looks like Ram Dass.
Right. Exactly.
So I put a picture of Ram Dass and the flying Zardos head, and I put them together on Facebook and I wrote Zardos. Yeah, that's a great.
Because it was made in the 70s, and it totally, we are right at where that movie is.
Sure.
Because
Systems of control.
right, and
How to break out by changing the consciousness.
right, but and that whole gated community of the rich, who and they were all transhuman. I mean, they lived forever.
They were.
And they were being oppressed by artificial intelligence.
That's correct.
It ran everything, right? They had to be good, or they would be made older but never die.
Right. And Sean Connery is sort of like this random primitive element that brings it back to their humanity.
But he's really smart because he understands all this stuff. It's not
Well,
like
then what's really cool is that his creator, the guy Arthur Frame,
right.
did the genetic manipulation to bring in. There's a great line in that movie, and I remember like really getting obsessed one morning. I was like, I gotta play that back. That one line, I remember finding it, and it was worth for me. It was worth my wife, faults as usual, but she lives with me. God bless her, and she tolerates me, loves me, and has helped me grow. The line where Frayne says to Zed, says, "I made you, I led you."
Right.
He said, "I bred you, I led you."
Right.
And Connery turns to him, looks him dead in the face, and said, "But I looked into the face of the force that put that thought into your mind." I was like, "Wow,
Yeah.
that's the brain sizzling stuff that I love, man.
Yep.
That's the doors opening up, you're waking up. Oh, it's all one, baby."
Yep.
That's cool, man. I'm glad.
And Sean Connery, what I loved about that guy, he could have played 007 for the rest of his life, right? And he quit. And in that period of 70s to early 80s, he did, Man Who Would Be King, Time Bandits, Zardos. Another movie that was truly amazing was called Everything You Know Is Wrong. And it was exactly what happened on 9/11, the blowing up the World Trade Center to start off a new, never-ending war. Period. And it was made in the 70s, and it showed all the people who were doing it. And you're a comic book guy. Were you a Stan Lee guy? Did you like Stan Lee?
I followed Marvel, yeah.
So the Captain America thing is truly amazing with Hail Hydra, because that's end of World War II. Germany bombed into the Stone Age, the German people, but the Nazis escaped to South America, down to Antarctica, to the moon, and came into our government. And the government we have now is Hail Hydra. And it out of Stan Lee. So this movie, Everything You Know Is Wrong, is exactly that. I mean, it was showing that, yes, there's this dual, communism against the West, but really there's this third entity that is the puppet master pulling all the strings. And when you tie that in, like David Icke, do you ever watch David Icke?
Sure.
Right?
I went to see David Icke do a talk at the Nokia Theater
Yeah,
many years ago.
Yes, I met him in the early 90s when I was doing the esoteric thing, and I was part of all these organizations, and a number of them we'd have lecturers, and he was lecturing to like 8 guys in the basement of a church, and I was going, yeah, this guy is right on. And that's when he was pretty young. He still had his soccer physique, and but he stayed at it. You got to hand it to that guy. He just,
Yeah, good.
he just stayed at it. Do you know Joseph P. Farrell?
Is he with the guy with the Palladians?
No, Joseph P. Farrell is a real historian, scholar, brilliant guy. Probably has 40 books out, and he documents all the Nazi stuff and how it came into our government and the flying saucers and you name it. He looks at it scholarly, not as why I left the whole esoteric thing and the flying saucer thing and all of that stuff is because it was turning into like a game show / religion. And, David, what's his name? What's that guy's name? David Wilcox. He's a good example. I know him pretty well too. And he's a nice enough guy. He's really, brings out a lot of good information, but he's so into himself and and making this whole circus kind of thing, which I'm not against the circus. I love the circus, but I want it to lead to the place where we all can understand rather than, again, be separated, right? Because all these things basically lead to separation, So,
well, if you're not careful, you don't just kind of realize it's an experience.
Right. And it's information
and
that
I'm not
digest.
perfect at that. Certainly I'm subject to those frailties.
Right.
But, I get it, like, especially like sort of when it becomes like a cult of personality.
Right.
Even David Icke kind of like treads on that.
Yes.
I just kind of, I don't want to say I got bored with it, but I came to a saturation point with all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like, all right, I get it. This is going on. This is the structure of things. I have to come from a place of complete acceptance of this is how it is structured, and then I will navigate from here.
Right.
And that's kind of the lessons you learn, and that's it. I particularly care. I like a guy by the name of Neil Kramer. He's actually he really promotes Christian mysticism. But he talks about that in one of his lectures. It's like, listen, you go through these different gates of awareness,
right,
but you have to be vigilant and not get stuck there.
Right.
And then the whole idea is like, where do you go from here? And it's really that whole spiritual development piece, and then recognizing, the non-dualistic nature of things, and then going from there. But for a while, I struggled with, just tell me more about reptilians. Like I would just get kind of caught up in the circus. Like,
right.
And it's like, and I get it. Hey, it sells books. Guys make a living off of it. God bless. It's a good gig, man.
And I also have to say that David Icke, more than most of those guys, I don't want to say he lives a monastic life, but he lives a simple life. Outside of what he does, he's really not trying to go to clubs and be on page 9.
He's got his little apartment
on the island.
The Isle of Wight.
Right.
He likes trains and soccer and football, as they call it.
And his kids, and that's it,
And just does his thing.
Right.
That's.
So did you have any?
Role model in terms of that piece,
did you have any experiences with paranormal and esoteria and flying saucers?
Yeah. When I was really little, I saw, some flying saucer, for lack of a better way of putting it. No abduction experience.
Right.
I definitely had that. There has been my apartment I've been living in with my wife for the past 17 years. We have occasionally visitors, meaning I don't like to use the term ghosts, but definitely been some activity. One time in particular that comes to mind was something kicked our bed physically, like right to we're both in it. It moved it at least a good foot to the side, and we just said, "Hey, whoever it is, we got to get up in the morning for work.
Right.
You can chill here, but you pull that shit, there's going to be a problem." And then that was it. There was no, and my dad actually asked. I've kind of was shown ways on how to tap into that to reach out to the other side.
Right.
And I asked, and my dad was very playful. One morning, I'm in the shower, and this loofah that I use was suddenly draped over my head, and there was a wind. There was nothing. All the windows were closed.
Right. And
I was like, "Oh, he's just being goofy," and letting me know that he's kind of figuring his way out on the other side.
Right.
That was cool. So to answer your question, I've had experience.
Right. So you know it's there, and so being the Aquarian I am, we always have to understand. Meaning, if I really have any addiction or something like that, it's to know. Did you ever see the Indiana Jones movie, the last one, where it's like the 50s and the Russians are looking for the crystal heads, right?
I've never seen it.
Well, the foil of Indiana Jones is this Russian scientist woman who's like brilliant, more brilliant than anybody, and her whole thing is, I want to know, meaning she's only doing the bidding of Stalin because he's giving her the power and the ability to go check this shit out, right? And so at the end of the movie, it comes to a thing where they get all the heads together, and bingo, it comes together as one alien creature that's been on Earth forever. And and the basic alien thing is that all of their technology was spattered across the planet, and when somebody would come and collect it all and bring it to this one place, that would be a signal that the ship would take off, go back home, and say, "Okay, the humans are getting close," right? And so she is the power. She's the one, you know, trying. She learns about this shit, and so she don't care. She goes to Area 51, breaks in, and starts, you know, taking shit together. And so the interesting thing is, at the very end, all these heads come together. The creature's there, and she's going, "I want," and everyone else is freaking out and realizing, "Uh-oh, shit's gonna hit the fan." So they all run out, you know, India and the girls and everybody else, and they get out, and but she stays there and goes, "I want to know, I want to know," and the guy like looks at her and, you know, and beams all the stuff she wants to know in her head, and her head explodes, you know. So I've been
Well, that kind of that theme was expressed in the very first picture.
right, yeah, with the Nazis, yeah, and yes, yeah. So and you know the Anglo-American guys who get the secrets and just put them in wooden boxes, put a number on them, and roll them into a gigantic warehouse.
Just to say they have it.
Right. Yeah. So they're kind of.
It's not even about utilizing the power.
Right.
Well, then again, sometimes that is the power.
Right.
We have it.
We got it. Right.
And well, when you and I talked about the other day about what went on in Iraq,
Right.
museum.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
same thing. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, these things are revealed to the so-called general public through films and things like that. So
Right.
then eventually, when they are, I don't want to say exposed, but
When something happens, they say, "Oh
something
yeah."
happens, nobody's really shocked.
Right. Right.
It's
Right.
already been conditioned.
Right.
That's kind of like the fail-safe.
Right.
It's
That's
like,
it.
well, it's going to come out eventually.
Right,
So just make a goddamn movie about it first.
Right, a few of them, and that's why Spielberg and J.J. Abrams. I mean, they are the gatekeepers. They're the guys who tell those stories. They've been tapped on
And
the
that's
shoulder.
magic, man.
Right,
It's the narrative.
right.
It's the control of the narrative.
Yeah, control the narrative. And they do it relatively well, and so yeah, so that's where, and so we're in a very interesting position because, you know, like here it is, the last day of June, and tomorrow's the 1st of July, and Monday is the 4th. And I've been talking about the big splat for the last 3 years. And basically, I said, I don't have a crystal ball, but I wouldn't be surprised if the aliens land on the front lawn of the UN around 4th of July. And that would be the thing that could, you know, because they have all this technology. And one of the reasons why they don't roll it out to save the day is it disrupts their present business plan, and they can't kind of roll this shit out, and people will go, "You've had this for the last 100 years, and you didn't let us use it. That would have saved the planet and us, and we wouldn't have had to have all these wars and da 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 da." We're pissed off about that. I mean, that's, I think, the generalistic reason why they don't roll any of this stuff out. They don't want that kind of disruption. They want
Sure.
disruption.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, they want disruption, but they don't want that kind of disruption.
Of course not. It's very good. It's an inconvenience. I can't get the sheep upset. Don't wild.
So,
Sometimes, I don't know. Sometimes what I think passes for the quote unquote normal human. I get it. It's kind of like you have the controlling types, or like they're just begging to be ruled. Look at them.
right.
And it's like I know this probably isn't a nice way to put it, but I kind of empathize. I understand where they're coming from.
Yeah, yeah.
Not to say I want to do that myself, but I kind of get it.
Right.
It's like, yeah, you know, they are begging for it. Some of them are. You know, it's like the Devo had a song called "Freedom of Choice."
Yes.
And it said, "Freedom of choice is what you want." No, freedom of choice is what you got. Freedom from choice is what you want.
Right.
And that's there's a lot of truth to that.
Yeah, I
I
love
mean, I
you.
even look at my own life, and like, there's a lot of times where Oh, I gotta be responsible. Like, I'm all into the idea of being personally responsible. Yeah, that's freedom and it's empowerment and it's all that good stuff. Then I'm like, oh, I have to do it, Mom. You know, I really want Big Mommy or Big Daddy to
Right.
tell me what to do.
Right.
Then I suffer, and then I wake up, and then I do what I'm supposed to damn well do.
Well, that's why my go-to thing is just do my best in that moment. Right? And I serve love's co-creation. Those are my two things that have saved me from all of that kind of stuff. Because I worked for people like that for a good 30 years, and that's why I did it. I mean, they paid me pretty good, but and I had access to seeing things, and in a certain way, if and the human experience kind of makes these swings, and even in the power structure, sometimes they're more benevolent than others. I mean, sometimes they just get so. Right now, we are at a high level of corruption. You know, that girl who was Jeffy, what's his name, the Lolita Express guy.
Yeah, what's his name? Ghislaine
Oh,
Maxwell.
yes. And what people don't realize is that those guys were in some of the deepest, craziest, esoteric, occult, high tech. Because Elaine Maxwell's family were pretty rich, and they were all about saving the oceans. But really, what they were all about was investigating underground, because 3/4 of the world is covered by water, and at some time, a good chunk of what's undersea were cities and empires and things of that nature. And so our real history is covered up by water, not sand. And so um, her family was really into that. And Jeffy, his whole, he went from being, his family were upper, lower, middle class, and he went to a pretty good school or two, and then um, very similar to me. I had the greatest of educations, um, and by the time I was my sophomore in college, I said, "Man, I learned more in like third grade than I did in these stupid colleges, so I'm out of the college scene." You know, and then I got into these like NGOs and nonprofits and corporations and things of that nature. And that's what happened to Jeffy. But he went for the power and the money. And so he was a bagman slash, doing dirty deeds, basically corrupting politicians, putting them in compromised positions, getting them drunk and videotaping them. So that's what his gig was. And that's why he became a billionaire in less than 2 years.
Yeah, it's. I haven't had that kind of experience, kind of rubbing elbows with these folks. Well, I mean, I've had my little brushes.
Right.
Worked at the UN for a little while.
Right. Okay. Then you know what I'm talking about.
Technician,
Yeah.
so I saw some stuff.
Yep.
I, worked for some major network TV stuff.
Right.
Saw some behind the scenes stuff. I wish it's funny. I don't want to get into that whole regret
Right.
thing because
No.
it's kind of productive. But I'm grateful that I had that experience so that when I did become or started my awakening, I'll say. I don't want to say I'm awake because it's a continual thing. When I started my awakening, then it kind of was like all these things clicked together. Because I honestly believe that we are led by our spirit.
Oh, of course.
And if you don't necessarily have the discipline of prayer and meditation in place to kind of focus that light with that lens,
right?
Kind of, it may appear aimless even to the individual, but when you put that lens in place, you're like, oh no, I was heading in this direction the whole time.
Right.
Kind of meandered, got a little lost in some of these details, and I ate too many potato chips and didn't really move forward.
Right.
But, I'm doing all right.
Right.
Okay.
Well, as my teacher always said, all things are as they should be.
Absolutely.
Right. And that, and so I've had some great teachers, and most of them gave me a sense of discipline, not like orthodoxy or belief structures, but discipline. Like do your best. Don't try, and like Yoda says, don't try, do, and have you're in service. That's what the Jedi's, they were in service, and so I'm in service to love's co-creation, and everything works out. Like right now, I have Zip Money, PayPal, which was one of, I mean, this year maybe I made $150 from people sending me stuff, and they said, "Oh, I have to fill out all these tax forms and show that I'm a corporation." And I said, what? It's like, no, these are like presents, gifts. And trying to communicate that to PayPal is like, no. So I'm thinking, no, I'm just gonna stop doing that and figure something else out. But the fact that I live on such little amount of money, but it's still, and this one friend of mine hates it when I say this. I live on $400. I live like a millionaire on $400 a month, and she really gets upset when I say that.
Well, I get it, man.
Right.
When I got clean this time in '07,
Right.
Fortunately, I had housing, like we talked about before,
right.
And I'm grateful for that. But I didn't. The blessing of it all, really, was one, I could focus on my recovery and all the other things, which was great. But what I really learned over time, because I was trying to get back to work, but the universe was like, "Nah, you need to really get down on the spiritual stuff and heal and learn about yourself."
Right.
And then it was like, "Oh wait, I have no social identity," because most conversations in our material world are, "What do you do? What do you do for a living?" And I was like, I would tell people I'm the happiest broke motherfucker I know.
Yeah.
Not as eloquent as what you just said, but
Right.
the sentiment is there.
Right.
And people are like, "What? Like, your life's a shambles. You're starting over again." And,
Right.
and that is true
Right.
on one level, but I chose not to see it that way.
Right.
And I was the freest and happiest that I had ever been in my entire life.
Right. And
Now I have a little bit more responsibilities in the paycheck and all that other shit.
Right.
But it's recognizing again, wear that stuff like a loose garment, then
Right.
you'll be okay.
Right.
But when I make all that stuff my God,
Right.
it's a wrap, baby. There's no rest. There's no peace.
Right.
And I like being committed to joy.
Right.
Yep.
Being committed to joy. Yep. And that, I think, start like every morning. I mean, I have so many things wrong with my body because I really abused it for 14 years. And, I weighed 460 pounds. You talk about addiction. I mean, I wasn't addicted to food. I just ate a lot of it.
I didn't like Coke, but I liked the way it smelled.
Yes. And, I was in the corporate world. I worked with these lawyers, and that's how they lived. And I wasn't working half as hard, a tenth as hard as they were. And so I just was living, just on that. And so 14 years of that, I went from about 180 to, 460 pounds. And then I died, And so every morning when I wake up, I'm in pain. So I have to meditate, I have to pray. Once I get, things, my homeostasis set, I can get up and move around, and it's all good. And but that's like a blessing, So it's like I start over every day, with that, So,
well, it's that whole here's a Stanley Kubrick and Steven Spielberg reference.
Right.
You ever see it's a film? It's called AI.
Yes. Yep.
Right, because that was originally Kubrick, and then
right, he died. And then, right.
There's one scene in that film that I've been really kind of meditating on in my mind lately. Mainly because I'm 53 now. I lost my dad.
Right.
I'm kind of like in the club. I got one parent down. And you're looking at mortality, and I really got into that guy Stephen Jenkins, and and I got into some other practices of, you look at your mortality, not in a morbid way. You just
Right.
see it as, you accept the finality of things.
Right.
You accept endings.
Yep.
And there's a lot of spiritual growth can be had in that. And I was relating it to the scene in the film where the AI robot boy, whatever you want to call him,
Right.
is able to bring back his mother from the dead because he longs for his mom.
Right.
It's a very universal human thing.
Yeah.
Long for
Yeah.
mommy,
Yeah.
long for daddy, the Holy Father, how loves creation, all that stuff. So these aliens are able to resurrect his mom,
Right.
and they tell him, they said she's only going to be alive one day.
Yep.
And there's a little montage of all the nice things they do within a day, and I say to myself, Robert, you have not wasted your life, because a lot of times that pessimism creeps in,
Right.
a self-pity, and it says like, dude, if you're living the best day you are, kind to yourself, you're kind to other people,
Yep.
you win, you're good. And I just reflect on that little kid doing that with his mom.
Yep.
And that helped me a lot. I'm going to get old. I'm going to get home.
You're going to get verklempt. You're going to get verklempt.
But it's important.
Yeah, it is, and that's one of the things I see. Like my brothers and my sisters, they can't remember anything past their 21st birthday. I mean, all their teenage years, because my brothers and sisters all fought my parents, and it was like in the 60s, so they were the uber selfish bourgeois teenagers, right? And they had an unbelievable life. They had everything, they had cars, whatever they wanted. Me, I was brought up by my grandma, who really lived a very simple life in New York City. But we had all these museums to visit, all these places to go, and people she knew who were like did amazing things. So those were my mentors. Where my brothers and sisters had none of that. All they had was conflict with my parents, and I learned at an early age about conflict is that you can't win, so you might as well just go around it. And you can't fight City Hall, but you can go underneath it, over it, around it. You can negotiate. That's why, my
Make your own damn City Hall.
right, exactly. Yep. So, and when you do that, that's when you have a rich life because you're not wasting so much time on this angst that means nothing.
Right. Exactly. And I know from my experience of wasting a lot of time and resentment,
Yep.
angst and all that stuff.
Yep.
And then again, when you realize, I shared with you about Anthony DeMello.
Right.
I'll send you that stuff. It's the thing when you realize you're the one generating the damn suffering.
Yep.
So it's like, all right, well, you're either gonna have to put you off or you're gonna keep it on.
So that's like
My lovely wife says, and I'm gonna say this over the interweb.
right.
So say, Robert, you are committed to your unhappiness.
Right.
And I'm like, damn, she's right. So that's why I said it's a balance of saying, am I committed to my joy or am I committed to my unhappiness?
Right.
Making a choice.
Right.
A deliberate, conscious choice. And we have that. And people think that that's so minuscule and it's about a big car and money and stuff. That's cool stuff. I'm not going to say it's not fun.
Right.
I like fun.
Right.
I like fun stuff. I like comic books, big popcorn, and all that shit. But that's not my God.
Right.
And that's just God's playroom.
Right.
Right.
Right. Right.
And it's just to really get to understand that you do have mastery, self-mastery over the emotions and feelings and stuff, to the point where you can create with them. And a great image, I think, of a representation of God, it's a very ancient image, is that of the potter throwing clay.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's not, you're doing that in yourself.
Yep.
The universe gave that to you.
You are the potter.
You're your own mom, you're your own dad.
Yep.
You're everything.
Right. Yep.
The Alpha and Omega. Jesus taught us. And it's, I think it's our job, guys like us, women like us, beings like us, just transmit the great transmission.
Right.
Right. In our own little way.
Yep.
If it connects with someone else to continue the circuit, we're serving our function.
Yep. And that's what we're here for. Nothing else. All the other stuff is you can either see it as icing on the cupcake, or you can see it as you're addicted to the cupcake. It's
Yeah.
and so I mean,
I just like what The Rock said. Know your role and shut your
Yep.
Yeah, I know my role.
Right.
But I used to have that confused when I was a little kid. It was like, oh, you're telling me what to do. And they weren't telling me what to do. These were people, my folks, who weren't well, were abused, and
Right.
that went down the line. But then what's beautiful is that the negativity, the buck stops here.
Right.
Me, with you, with anyone else and we all have the ability to transmute that negative energy.
Right. No matter no matter what happened in the past, you can transmute it. You can.
That's exactly it. That's part of the past.
Right.
So,
Well, okay, handsome. I'm going to let you go because I'm going to call.
Thank you, sir, for your time.
Have you been watching the chat? People been.
I answered a couple of the chats.
Yeah.
I get too distracted with it, but yes, I was.
Yeah. I
Got some action there. It's nice. And
Yeah,
thank you for the nice comments from the folks.
Yeah, Jamie Hiller he's always a thoughtful person. There are a few who do
Reach
it.
out to them.
Yeah, that's good. Well, okay,
Nice.
handsome. I'll talk to you later.
Take care, man. Be well.
Yep, that was
well.
good.
God keep you. Bless
Okay.
you.
Yep.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Okay, so that was our friend, right? So now we're gonna try John Birmingham. Right? We got one side of the scale, now we're gonna go to the other side, right? Come on. Let's see if our boy answers the phone. Oh, it's ringing. It's three of you there. 2 likes. In reality.
Hello.
Hey, handsome, what's up?
Hi.
Hi there.
Hi. How are you?
Oh, I'm okay. I got to a place where I could get on the old internet, and I tried to call you a few times, and so here you are. So you sent me a couple of texts saying, "Hey, you want to come here?" And I sent you a couple of texts back saying, "I don't know if you could handle this because you'd have to sleep on the ground. If you got rain, if it rained, you'd get wet. There's no food. There's no food here. I have no money. I have." It's a very limited. It's almost a monastic life. Now you kind of live in a monastic life. You're all up there on top of the hill, and
Yeah. Oh, great. Well, I was thinking about selling this house and moving somewhere else. But
Okay.
I don't know if I should or maybe I'd like to, but I want to live somewhere where like I can do entertainment as a career, and they're gonna go, oh, we know what that is or something, and that's okay to do to go big with it.
around here, like I said, I live in a very strange place where people are really,
Man,
country folk with their guns and rich people with their gated communities. And so both are kind of in their own silo. And even though I can communicate to them and have interesting conversations, the larger scene is not so. If you think Roanoke is constrictive, this place is 1,000 times more than that. And
oh well, I noticed because sometimes you wear like a hunting outfit
right.
and you look like you talk like this. Hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm a hunter. Hi, or something like that. But it's you.
I have an orange hat that says "I live to hunt."
But I was a vegan.
Right.
But
Anyway, John, I was just talking to a friend about life in general, and he's had real problems, and he had to face them, and came out the other side. And we all have problems. My body is kind of broken, and I have to deal with that. And,
No,
and so, we all have to.
sound okay.
Oh, well, it's always okay. I'm alive right
I
now.
have
I'm
pains
good.
here and there, pains, a little pains or something, but it's like as if, like compared to how bad some people have it.
Well, I can barely walk and I can barely see, and my blood sugar and blood pressure and all those things are issues, but I deal with them, and I don't complain about them, and I don't find them, basically every challenge I have is an opportunity to do better.
Maybe you're getting older and I don't realize it.
Yeah, boy. Yeah, I'm in my 70s, so yeah, I am getting older.
Life is not as long as we may think that. I don't know.
No, every day is a blessing, John. Every day can be
If
your
I
best.
make it through this, maybe I'll live to be 100 something.
Well, if you want to be, sure.
But sometimes
I mean, your parents are in pretty good shape. They're getting old, and your grandma lived to be. How old did your Noni live to?
Most people, I think my mom is in the best shape for 70s.
Right.
Because even in her later 60s, she was dancing and had a skinny stomach, looked like somebody in her 40s.
Right.
In her
I mean,
40s.
yeah, and your mom's in pretty good shape for her age, and your dad's okay for his age too. And
I hope he's okay.
but John, the real deal is, it's your life. You can decide what to do with it, and all you have to do is do your best, whatever you're doing it. And your
Well, I like
your
to have-
YouTubes and
I like to have my wife.
well, I don't know if you and Dana can I mean, you'll always have a relationship. You have kids, and you need to reintegrate yourself with your children because it would be good for you and good for them. And
Well, with my dad, usually I would. Yeah, my wife and kids. Yeah, of
Right.
course.
but I mean, your wife and kids, it's a different situation than it was when you were married. That you can't go back. Is what I'm saying. You can go forward.
Yeah.
You
But
can
then
make a
at
new
home, it was
situation.
It was never awkward. It was never anything weird about it. It was always happy, okay, compared to how it's been now. It was okay to say things were happening. It wasn't been anxiety. Like now, it's like it hasn't been that great. But sometimes it's okay. Sometimes it's okay. Maybe it'll get better. I don't know.
I mean, that's what life's
But
about.
not like maybe it wasn't the best. Maybe it wasn't. But no, I miss her and kids. I know that.
But you can move forward,
I've been
John.
so sad.
You can move forward, and that's really
I don't know if there's anything else
there. Of course, there's what.
besides God.
Well, God is always there, John.
Trying to,
God is always there.
but the devil messes things up.
No. We mess.
The devil
We
messes
know
things
the devil can't make it. The devil doesn't do anything. Devil can. Devil is tricky. Devil.
Maybe sin and feel
know,
that. Feel that.
You can. No, the devil just puts things in our way, and we can either ignore them and go around them and not have to deal with it, or we can get sucked in and but the
Well, it'll
devil.
kill all of us.
But the devil doesn't do it. We do it. We are the masters of our life, and so it's like that's the thing we have to live through.
Well, God's everywhere at all times, and way more powerful than the devil will ever be. And God's everywhere, so we'll be safe as long as we're good and kind to others and follow the Bible and we're not mean. We do bad things.
The devil, like I said, the devil has no real power over us. It can trick us. It can tantalize us. It can put things in our way that we can that's what addiction is about. That's what all of those things are. But we do them like myself. I put myself in a life.
I don't have any addiction. I quit caffeine.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I quit caffeine. I'm having the addiction right now.
I mean, you quit coffee. I mean, and you quit nicotine. I mean, those
A
are
long
good
time
things.
ago. I quit.
Right, right.
Yeah.
So, but the thing is, John, it's up to you to be happy. No one's going to make you happy. You know, getting this thing or that thing or this person or that person, it's not going to make you happy. You know, now, your family, that's something that is a commitment that you entered into. You have children; they're always going to be
What do
your
you think?
children.
What do you think it means? Oh yeah, my wife and kids. Yeah, they're the most important to me. But for you, you may not
My
understand that
thing,
much.
John. I'll tell you what my
That
thing.
they're really alive on.
My thing is that in every day and every way, I take love's piece and make it stronger by doing my best, no matter what I'm doing. You know, whether I'm writing, whether I do my best. You know, I I don't go into self-loathing. I don't go into being depressed or ecstatic. You know, I do my best. You know, I do my best. You know, and that's it. And
Yeah, there's a person who I'm friends with, Luis, and but the other people in my life aren't like my wife.
well, you know,
I gotta go. I think I'm supposed to go.
okay, buddy. Okay, stay well, my friend. Okay. Okay. So there's two sides of the dollar there, and yep, bring all things. Yeah, and it's like John. Like to see you. You know, we can't make excuses. We just have to move forward. That's what life's about: moving forward, doing our best. You know, learning from our experiences. You know, and like I said, John's the canary in the coal mine. You know, we can observe what humanity's doing. It's like when we constantly tell this story about the burning bush talking to Moses, and Moses wanted to know the burning bush's name. Now, he did not say, I am who I am. What he said was, I am a work in progress. And you, meaning the world, all our relations, meaning humans and animals and everybody, is its, not his, its mirror. There is no gender to the burning bush. Right? It's love's co-creation. That's what we're here to be part of. Love's co-creation, right? Onward and upward, yes. And so I have this ability to see things, and it can frustrate me sometimes, And the powers that be, they don't get rid of me. They just keep me down on the farm, and that's fine. I don't need to be woo famous A-list or any of that because I am that little pebble in the pond. I'm here, and every day I wake up, I meditate, I pray, I do my exercises, I move forward and go do something. Either be at the deep green fixing something, or tending the garden, or sitting there looking at a flower. Spend a whole before I had my operated on. I was looking at this flower for about 5 hours because it was like growing, because it wasn't there, and then all of a sudden popped up, and there it was, and then the buttercups, and I saw it go like popping out of the ground to like getting about a few inches tall, and then the flower come out and it was saying, "Hi, how you doing?" So you can communicate to all living things, right? And you can be part of all our relations. That's everything. Skin, warm-blooded, cold-blooded, skin, scaled, furred. Winged. We're all part of love's co-creation. And when we separate ourselves, and we have a sense of separation, we're better than the other. That's when we have wars. That's when we have conflict. That's when we can wipe out whole species just for profit. What is profit? But useless pieces of paper, or O's and X's on a board. It's like it's and in the years when I worked not to make a living. I worked because I enjoyed what I did. For all those years being an electrician, I enjoyed doing that. Those years I worked as a scholar, I enjoyed doing that. When I worked in the corporate world, I enjoyed doing that. Right now, it was a environment that was quite toxic. So I gained almost 240 pounds, and I died, but I didn't die all the way. I got to navigate around that and lose. Now I'm down to 199. I went below 200, so it's and I'm not pumping iron or doing 1,000 sit-ups. It's just my lifestyle. My lifestyle has led me to be healthy, even though my body is certain things I did to it that things I did to my pancreas and my kidney and my. Now I didn't drink a lot. So still kind of they all work okay, but I have to be responsible. I can't just eat this, that, or the other. I have to be responsible. And with my lack of funds, I went from having more money than I really need. I mean, like probably 100 times more than I have now. But really, I'm not living any better. I'm actually probably living better physically, because I don't drive everywhere. I walk everywhere, or mostly everywhere. And I get good night's sleep. I go to bed around 10:30, 11, wake up around 7, so, or later, because I don't really have to get off and do anything. Whereas my neighbor, Florida boy, I mean, he's out here in the middle of nowhere. He doesn't really have a job, but he leaves the house by 6. I hear him drive by. So, because I'm pretty sensitive to everything. So, even though he's like, a man cave is a good quarter mile from where the road is, and, but I hear everything, and, sense everything. I haven't quite gotten myself to a place where I can see other frequencies of light. The eyes of a bumblebee. Because then you see patterns. If you look at infrared and ultraviolet photographs of plants, whoa, they're amazing. So we have all of that. We have all that in our life. We have Jamie left. Jamie H left the building. So I hope you guys enjoyed this hour or so. I'm going to leave at 1 hour, 33 minutes, 33 seconds. Charlie Brown will make me think of Lucy. Just kidding. Yeah, I love John's laugh. I mean, John, if you watch his videos, he's like Jerry Lewis. The French thought he was the greatest artist in the world. Well, that's John. He really is. He's got and it's at this time I can't be around him that much because it really hurts me to see him suffer. And he brings on all that suffering himself. I mean, he has all this talent. He has all these resources. He could do really anything. I mean, he got in the car and drove to California, and then was miserable there, right? So, where you are isn't what makes you miserable or not miserable, right? So, my path right now, this summer, I'm going to get my body into its best shape, and I really want to get the band together and take it on the road. Right now, a cadre of folk like the Merry Pranksters, Allen Ginsberg and the gang, um, you know, that's something I would like. My school bus, and it's not going to be in that, but I know that if we put something together, and I'm a guy who does things with groups of people. I am like, my business card says art party ringleader, cultural provocateur. Right? So that's what I was back in the 70s and 80s and 90s. That's when I was the mystery of EMF, electromagnetic force. In the 90s, I would say itinerant scholar. And then, in the O's, I was the corporate jester. Right? I worked for the Desperate Lawyers. And all of those things were great parts of my life. And I got a good deal of photography on everything, except, when I worked in environments where I had to sign a non-disclosure form, I couldn't be taking photos of those things. But I did take photos of things that were happening around them. I think the next show I will. Problem is when that happened, I switched from chemical photographs to digital photographs, and then the technology changed so much that those images are stuck in laptops and phones and digital cameras and SD cards that don't even work anymore. I mean, they work, but not in the newer things. Anyway, so that's kind of where we're at. The folks are, yes, we're getting close to 133.33. So at 133.33, I'm out of here. So I'm just going to say a nice little Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. I was in the beginning, is now, ever shall be, world without end. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee. Blessed art thou amongst women, blessed is thy womb, Jesus. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. Every day and every way, let us take the peace of the earth and make it stronger. Let us serve love's co-creation to the betterment of all our relations. I love you all. Stay well. Some more thumbs up. Leave some comments, and I'll see you next time I see you. Maybe, not quite sure what I'm going to be doing till after the 4th. But this was my last trip out to do this. I've got a few more other little things to do. But I'll see you next week. Definitely.